Debate live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Click OK, Neil, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
How are you?
Morning, everyone.
Hey.
Good morning, folks. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Hello.
How's it all going? Everyone had a lovely weekend? Yes, Nathan, we all really enjoyed it. We missed you being live. Oh, well, that's so terrible. We're back live now, so everyone's happy.
Yeah, everything is roses.
Everything's roses, apart from there's some shenanigans going on within the Flat Earth community that I woke up to this morning from a message from Wakey Wakey. Now, Mark Knight is a guy who I've known probably for about 10 years now, shockingly, because he was one of the first people I communicated with when I came to Flat Earth in a real sense. And yeah, so Mark Knight has put out a little message on Facebook a couple of days ago, and he went out of his way to contact me specifically about it this morning. So I woke up glazed-eyed going, oh, what's this message? And Mark Knight's telling me to go and have a look at a post on Facebook, which I dutifully did. And it's a bit saddening because, number one, I'm a bit too ignorant of this subject to know what's what, and no matter how much I seem to dig into it, I just get told there's nothing to see here. It's just a way of making money for people who are selling these coins in a kind of Logan Paul-esque kind of way, although maybe on a much smaller scale, I don't know. I'll just read out his post. So this is Mark Knight, otherwise known as Wakey Wakey's post on Facebook. So it says, Dave Weiss and his FE crew have created a token crypto scam, Dollar Dome. This is a Ponzi scheme to get people to promote his paid app, open brackets, MLM style, close brackets, via tokens. But it gets worse. 65% of tokens remain, quote, under creator control, end quote. And now tokens are being sold. The token has no inherent value or utility and solves no problem. It's technically a funnel to move other people's wealth to the creators. It is on Pulsex blockchain, which has almost zero respect in the industry. Open brackets, look into the creator, see images below, close brackets. On Pulsex, one can create a new token in minutes with a few clicks. PLX itself is 85% down since creation. Dollar Dome is already trading, and one can see $750 in token buys yesterday alone, open brackets, half of volume, close brackets. Dollar Dome can only go up in price if new people come in and buy. This is, by definition, a Ponzi. And as they hold 65%, they can skim off the top. Everyone, stop being donuts. Please share, as people are already buying this trash. That was the message from Mark Knight. There you go. That's what I woke up to this morning. So you think, great. So some other dirty, scammy, schemy coin thing being flogged in the FE community under the guise of it being to do with domes. And every time I've asked my panel, what the hell is this? I get told about Bitcoin and how it makes money, and there's no explanation to anything that has any association with domes beyond the name itself. So, I don't know. Maybe Brian can enlighten my audience, because I can't.
Well, I didn't say anything about Bitcoin. You brought up Bitcoin. I didn't bring up Bitcoin.
I'm just using it as a term incorrectly because I'm ignorant.
Okay. There's a couple of different types of crypto coins, right? There is crypto coins like Bitcoin that has a use in the world, right? They might be used, like Bitcoin is basically just a store of value. That's what it is. A bit like gold or silver or something like that, right? Whereas other coins can be used within the financial system, within the medical world, this industry, that industry, right? So they have that kind of utility, right? Or that's what they're being promoted as, right? Then there's another coin called a meme coin. The whole purpose of a meme coin is it's purely there as a buy and sell coin. It's purely there for it to be traded. So someone can buy into it if they buy in at the right time and they sell at the right time, they make money. If you don't, you lose money. But you will be able to buy in again, or if you keep your coins, they will go back up. It's like a meme coin is like a yo-yo. It goes up, it goes down, it goes down, it goes up. It doesn't stay down. If it's a proper meme coin, it won't stay down, and it'll never stay up, if you know what I mean. So it's always going to be yo-yo. You know what you're buying into. If it's done correctly, then it's honest. Everyone knows what they're buying. So everyone's fully aware that when you're buying into it, you might lose money, but if you hold on to your coins, you eventually will break even or make money off of it, right? Then there's this type of coin. Now, from what I can tell from what Mark Knight wrote, I can't verify any of this because I haven't looked into it, but from what I can tell, this is a fourth type of coin, whereas it's like something shiny on a little piece of wire or a piece of twine being, like hit in front of someone's face, making someone go towards it, when all it's going to, and while you're going towards it, there's a handgun in your pocket taking your money. So the only people who are going to make money out of this if the person who controls it controls 65%, and if that's David Weiss, then at any point he can be selling off when the money that's invested into the coin brings the price of the coin up. He can sell off and make a load of money for himself. Whereas when he sells off, though, what's going to happen is the price of the coin is going to go down. So he can make money and everyone else can lose. And you have to ask then, who else owns the last 35, 40% of whatever it is of the coin? Like, how many of those people were bought in at a time, were told to buy in now by someone like David Weiss, right? And how many of them just know what they're dealing with, or are used to this kind of thing, know what they're dealing with, and they'll, like, there's some traders, they'll buy in and they'll sell out 3 minutes later. Do you know what I mean? Things like that, or they buy in and sell out a day later or 2 hours later.
Yeah,
this kind of thing.
Again,
so it gives the impression. Hang on, let me finish. It gives the impression that this coin is going somewhere, like a meme coin or something. Whereas it's not a meme coin. The whole purpose of it is purely to rip people off.
Sure. Again, every time you use some of these terms, I hear familiar terms in terms of the stock exchange. Things like day traders. There's whole movies made about it. Like, hello. Hello? Okay, shout out to TVH. Nathan, can you ask QE when is the final excrement? Okay, I'll ask him. Thanks for the super chat. Asram, yes, go ahead. Hello, Asram. You blurted out my name and then...
That's the most annoying thing.
Yeah, he's blurted out my name. Mic open, not saying anything.
How celestial navigation prove flat Earth?
One more time.
I want to know how celestial navigation using sextant prove flat Earth.
Sounds like you already know.
I want to have a better understanding on this so that I can tell others.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. After we're finished talking about what we're talking about, maybe. Because this is like a red herring away from what we're talking about for some reason.
But it does sound like he already knows.
Have we finished with that topic?
No.
Have we finished with that topic?
Seems like it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead with your topic.
But it sounds like you already know the answers to your question.
We don't need your permission. I don't need your permission to keep doing anything, whoever you are.
But just to round that out, it does sound like you already know. Yeah? If you're watching the live stream on screen right now, there's your fix being acquired with 3 stars off a flat plane. You asked about the sextant, so you know the measuring tool. It sounds like you already know, you just want to deny it, and you're hoping that, by having an argument with me, you'll find out that we're not measuring angles off a flat plane with the sextant. It sounds like you already know. And are in denial, like you don't like the fact that Earth's measured flat with these angles on screen for my audience right now. What are you hoping to achieve? Are you hoping to debunk celestial navigation? I'm asking you, Azam, what are you hoping to achieve?
No, I don't want to. No, I don't want to debunk celestial navigation. I want to have a better understanding of this so that I can propagate this.
So you can what, sorry?
I don't want to debunk anything. I want to have a better understanding on this.
Okay. I mean, it's on screen for my audience now. If you look at the live stream, obviously keep your live stream on mute if you go to YouTube. It's on screen. The process. Acquiring 3 circles of equal elevation, areas of equal altitude, with 90 degrees at the base of the star that you're measuring to your position along a flat Earth. That's what you measure with the sextant. There you go. That's it. It's not difficult to summarise, but it is quite complicated to learn. It took me about a year, maybe longer, to understand it. So in terms of complexity, it's not. There it is on screen. Hopefully that helps. What's your position, Azam? Are you a flat earther already and just want a better understanding of celestial navigation so you can tell your friends and family how Earth's flat?
I'm doing a research on it, and I'm more inclined towards Earth being flat.
Well, that's how it's measured, so that would make sense.
What research needs to be done on celestial navigation?
Well, like I just said.
People have been doing it for years.
Yeah, it took me a year to understand it. It took me about 6 months to recognise that I'd already had it explained to me once by my sister. Literally. Admittedly, there are reasons behind that. There was a death involved in the person that was the owner of the boats that were being, out with sextants to be shown to me. Therefore, a huge chunk of my life I just blanked out because it was very, very distressing. Like a tragedy in terms of the family when a death occurs. Some of the things that you do with that person get blanked out. You just don't want to think about them. So at some point while I was learning about how celestial navigation functions, in fact, it wasn't even like that. I was explaining it to my sister, and she had to stop me and go, "You do realise you've been out on the boat with me and the guy was called Dave, my former brother-in-law before he died. We've done this. You've been shown how to do this. Why are you telling me this?" And suddenly you get all these flashes of it happening, and you're like, bloody hell, I've blocked all of this out of my mind to the point where I can literally have it explained to me now and not even recognise that it's already gone in once. You know what I mean? It's bizarre. I'm smiling about it, but it's weird when you can literally learn an entire subject. No, I didn't, don't get me wrong, I didn't sit down and do celestial navigation lessons, but I certainly had it explained to me. And in a scenario that was appropriate on the boat. You know what I mean? So you'd think that would stick in your mind, especially when someone comes along, however many years it is now, it's probably 25 years later, and says, this is how this process works. You go, right, I'll pay attention to this. You start learning it, and in your mind, you're learning it fresh. Like, no, I've literally sat out on a boat with a sextant. So, while I haven't actually ever had the need to find my position at sea, far from it, there's been people around me with GPS and complicated stuff that keeps you from straying too far from shore and being able to find your way home. But you've still got to know how to do this stuff. I didn't. I wasn't the boat owner. But I was certainly exposed to it in a fairly significant manner prior to learning about it for a second time. Then you come around it for the second time, and Neil's like, why would you need to do any research? You're like, well, because same reason we did. We're lucky. You, Neil, are lucky that you've had 10th Man sitting with us for a year and a half, going through it with us day by day by day, drip, 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 learning it. Lucky old us. Thanks, 10th Man, if you're out there listening. Big shout out to you.
Yeah, but once he broke down the circles of equal altitude, it was a punch in the face when he started explaining that there could be thousands and thousands of square miles flat. I mean, what's there to understand? And another thing I wanted to say to you, do you remember maybe about a month and a half ago, that guy Steve Bauman came in? He's always in your chat. This guy is an outright liar, because I remember on the show, you explained to him. Can you read off the The one you always read off. What is it by oh God, the elevation angle.
An elevation angle, sometimes known as solar elevation angle, is the angle described between the line between the light in the sky, the sun, and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on. There you go, paraphrasing it.
Okay. Now there's one imaginary line, right? And there's one literal plane that you're standing on. And he's in chat claiming that they're both imaginary. This is the type of stuff that you have to deal with. People that try to lie and deceive people because they can't come to grips that Earth is flat.
The last correction that you make, the very last correction you make, is site reduction. And site reduction, right, how it's determined is the almanac basically makes mean sea level or sea level your horizontal, your adjacent. And it removes all claimed celestial refraction. So there is no dip. That's all nonsense, all removed. All celestial refraction nonsense is removed. And mean sea level or sea level is determined to be your horizontal. And why is that the last thing they do? Because it gives accuracy. So when they remove all the nonsense, right, all the dip nonsense, and they remove all the claimed celestial refraction, which is not refraction, they get accuracy. Isn't that bizarre? So that's what you get. So the very last thing is to treat the sea level as horizontal. And if that horizontal, your adjacent is 500, 3,000 nautical miles in length, then that's 500 or 3,000, you know what I mean, nautical miles of horizontal.
That's not imaginary, right?
Well, I've got the definition actually
No.
posted by Divergent Droid. I'll read it out verbatim rather than paraphrasing it. The altitude angle, open brackets, sometimes referred to as the solar elevation angle, close brackets, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on. Sustainable by design, altitude angle. Thank you, Divergent Droid.
That doesn't sound like there's two imaginary lines to me.
You're on a plane of reference that you're trying to find your position on. So when they describe the ground as imaginary, it's a bit like denying the latitude lines that are wrapped around the globe when I take them to a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, but you're falling for it. You're falling for his begging the question, right? All the lines are imaginary, right? But they're not two lines. It's an elevation angle. There's three. It's a right-angled triangle. It's always three. You don't use trigonometry to solve it, but you are always creating a right-angled triangle because that's an elevation angle. Because if you're not creating a right-angled triangle, it means you're not measuring the opposite. You're not measuring a vertical angle of height, which means you're not measuring three dimensions.
Yeah,
So you can't not measure three dimensions and measure an elevation angle.
Exactly.
So when someone says, 1 second, Nathan, please. When someone says, "Oh, two lines," they're already trying to get. It's like saying when the ballers start saying that we say the horizon always rises to eye level, when what was actually originally said was that the horizon always appears to rise to eye level. They started leaving out the word appears and getting flat earthers to agree with the horizon rises to eye level. And now they want to talk about two lines. No, an elevation angle is three lines, not two. Stop wasting our time. Just go away.
Yeah, elevation itself is specifically with reference to the ground. That's what elevation is. So when you're measuring this angle, this is an elevation angle with respect to the ground because it's elevation. When Brian says it's a triangle, this is what you're trying to get. You're trying to get a 90-degree position at the base of the star. That's what you're trying to achieve with the angle measurement. Yeah? That's its ground position. Why do you need it? Well, because you're going to be drawing a circle around that position. And that circle is called a circle of equal altitude. It's an area of equal elevation. On a Cartesian grid, you're going to use a map to find where you are. You want this position. You want to know where you are. And you're finding it by measuring an elevation angle. And when they deny elevation angles are with respect to the ground, they deny the principle of celestial navigation. Navigating the ground.
Yeah, once you say the word elevation, come on, you're done.
It's game over. It has been for a while.
But how do you measure the elevation of, let's just say, a tower, or a building or a mountain, right, without measuring the vertical angle or height? You can't, right? The same for a celestial body. You can't measure the height of it above the horizon without measuring the vertical, the opposite.
Exactly. But
That's why it can't be done.
Exactly, and as you've disclaimed, it's not trig. It can be done with trig if it's a lighthouse, because you've got physicality to actually confirm some of the distances. For instance, if you're measuring the angle, you can solve for any of the lines if you've got a physical lighthouse. You can't solve for the actual height of the star or sun, but you're not trying to. You're not trying to find out how, when you do this celestial navigation function, this is the measurement of the elevation angle in this diagram. You're not saying, when you're here, going, where the hell am I? We are lost. I need to know exactly where I am. Let's measure an angle and figure out where we are with relation to that star's GP, because we know what angle we have and what time we measured the angle. So we can look it up in the almanac and say the sun is above this point on the ground at this time, because we know where the sun's above at a given time. So when we measure it, we can establish that the sun is above this point, not how high it is. We're trying to draw a circle on the ground, because eventually we're going to do it with another item, or we're going to wait for the sun to move. So we can do it again and draw another circle. So we can hopefully get 2 points where the two circles cross over, and one of them will be us. Hopefully the other one is over land, so you know where you are. But if it's not, you've got to use 3. Or wait for the sun to move again, and then take its angle. Note its time, because we know where the sun is above at given times. So you can draw another third circle, at which point all 3 of the circles on the ground converge on a single point. That's your location. That's what you're trying to achieve. So what do we get from our opponent? You can't solve the opposite. What? We're not trying to solve it. We're not trying to find out how high the sun is above the ground. We want to know where it's above, at what time, so we can figure out with that information where we are. At no point do we go, how high is that sun? It's irrelevant and not possible to solve with celestial navigation. Now we substitute this sun for a lighthouse. We've got a physicality, we can confirm it. Yeah, we can calculate how high the lighthouse is. We can use trig. We just can't do that where we're trying to find out where we are with an item in the sky, and the only information we have about it, and the only relevant information, is where is it above at this time. That's all we need, so we can find out where we are on the ground. So solving the height is not part of this process. It's completely devoid of function. It has no use. We're not trying to get to the sun. We're not even trying to get to this position below the sun. We just know where the sun is at a given time, and we can use that information to find out where we are on the flat ground that we must measure for the angle. I'm done.
Yeah, why would we need to know the height of the star or the sun?
It's
Makes no
useless.
sense.
Surplus to requirement. Because it's surplus to requirement. You don't need that information. You're not trying to get to it. You're not trying to get to the sun. And how high it is above the ground is irrelevant. It wouldn't matter if it was an inch or 20,000 miles. It's above the ground at a given time. That's all that matters when you're trying to find out where the hell you are.
All elevations are apparent because they're all angular. So if you're measuring an elevation, right, with an elevation angle, then you're measuring an apparent height. The difference is if you're measuring the apparent height of a mountain from its base or the apparent height of a lighthouse from sea level, the difference is that when you raise up from that elevation, the angle to the top of that mountain or the top of the lighthouse will change. Whereas that doesn't happen with the celestial bodies, so it's impossible to give them a height. Because as you raise, they appear to raise with you. So you can't. That's why you can use celestial navigation from an airplane. You can take elevation angles from an airplane because the angle that a pilot will get will be exactly the same as the mariner will get to the same celestial body at the same time, 6 miles below them.
We're going to stop here.
How can they both get 32 degrees or whatever?
We're going to focus on this. This is the end quote from Adam Meakin: "The majesty of the heavens." End quote. What Brian has just described is the fact that the position that is being measured with this angle does not change with height. What does that mean? Okay, so on the screen you've got a plane with an angle coming from it. Because of the way that the stars present themselves to us, that is to say their angle doesn't change as you raise in height, as weird as that may sound, it means that all of the angles that you get, regardless of what height you take them from, so long as you establish horizontal, the point on the ground will always be below the point where you measure, because the plane of the surface is parallel with the plane that you establish when you're up in a hot air balloon. So you're up in your hot air balloon, you're measuring an angle to the star, and the angle that you are measuring is identical to the angle that the guy below you is also measuring. So there's a guy directly below the hot air balloon and a guy in a hot air balloon, both with sextants, both measuring angles to the same celestial item. They both get the same angle. That means that when you establish in the hot air balloon that you have a horizontal for your angle measurement, the point on the ground below the sun is the same for both measurements, because the ground is parallel with not only the sky, but with, shockingly, all horizontals, sorry. All horizontals are parallel. Yeah, shocking, isn't it? That means this principle, because it adheres to the principles of all horizontals being parallel with one another, it doesn't matter where in altitude terms you take the measurement. Now that tells me two things. Number one, we haven't got the slightest idea what the stars are, and how they behave is completely alien in terms of how other physical items behave in our presence. The stars behave like nothing else. But how they behave, number one, only affirms a flat Earth, and only functions if Earth is flat, and does function with a flat Earth, is measured with a flat Earth, and has created all of the maps. Now, those 5 items summarize how Earth is flat, how Earth is measured flat, and how the majesty of the stars gives us a usable tool to find our way around. But only, and I'll say this again, only if we accept that all horizontals are parallel with the plane of the surface of Earth. Earth is flat.
That was well said.
Here it is on screen. What a coincidence. I like this new reel. I made this for the meet I did in public. Any word on whether or not we'll be seeing public appearances from Simon Dan or Dave McKeegan? When are they going to go out in public? Are they still stuck in their echo chambers only? I put it out there. I hope something will come back in regards to when they'll be doing as I did in the last week or two. Go out and make public appearances, show your face, debate people live. I want to see when Simon Dan's going to do that, the abject coward, or Dave McKeegan, the total coward, stuck in their online-only internet echo chambers, never to be seen in public to be heckled about their globe faith and their religion. Nevertheless, that aside, here we are. Parallel plane, equator parallel with labelled parallel. That's what we've just described. If you're measuring and you assume that we've got a lighthouse in this, let's say this lighthouse comes to just here, off this plane, right? Forget about the circle around it. That's just a protractor, right? But if you're measuring a lighthouse and the lighthouse comes up to this high, you appreciate that when you measure the angle from up in the sky, you'll have a really acute angle to the top of the lighthouse. Whereas on the ground, you've got a much wider angle, yeah? The stars don't do that. When the guy here measures the star and the guy here measures the star, they both get the same angle, which would infer it's in two places. Nope. Just that's the majesty of the heavens. We don't know why they do that. We don't know what the stars are, but we do know that they do this. That is to say you get the same angle. So it works functionally as described here. Now, this diagram's describing the insides of a globe Earth. Why? Well, because this kind of nonsense is what you have to do to infer that any of these angles from the centre of hell have anything to do with an outside edge of a ball. It doesn't. But this kind of mathematical chicanery is what we get to convince us that we're in a ball, as nuts as that may sound. But yeah, all horizontals are parallel with the plane of Earth. Earth's flat.
Hey,
Can I ask
just
a question?
a quick comment on circles of equal elevation.
Yep, areas of equal elevation. Yep.
I was under the impression that it was the North Star that gave us our greatest circle of equal elevation, the equator. In a conversation with George the other day, he pointed out that the sun would give us a even larger circle of equal elevation, considering we see it both in the north and the south. And I didn't know if
No, you've got a set scale.
Let me.
Once a star
me
hits once a star or the sun hits the horizon, it's got a maximum.
No,
It can't be
No.
the. Okay, Brian,
No.
go ahead.
I'm trying to say. I've been waiting for a long time to try and correct this. The
Go ahead.
sun does not meet the horizon. That's called the sun mirage. So the sun is separate, and its behavior is a little bit separate from the rest of the star field. Right? All stars will give you the exact same, at the maximum, will give you the same size circle of equal elevation or equal altitude as Polaris.
Exactly.
Because they can only be 5,400 miles, nautical miles of a radius. So they'll all be the same. Now, the sun, you can kind of give it that, but the sun does not behave the same, so you can't really state what size of a circle of equal altitude has been created. All you can do is say 5,400. You can't do anything else. And that's why people often will use the sun, take several different sites. You know, there's a few different tricks. There's a lot more trickery. Polaris is more straightforward to use than the sun in celestial navigation. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, we still have all the GP points for the sun, but in terms of what it does and how it works, it's not working on the same cycle. Mechanically, if you look at these things as cogs in a machine, it's on a different set of cogs, the sun, that is. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't use the same principle and get the same angles and get the same GP points, because we do know where the sun is above at given times. So it's just as useful. But it doesn't match, right? This is part of the problem. This is part of the... Brian's, I don't know if he's done this deliberately, stumbled upon part of the need for the heliocentric model to unify these different systems that are just separate systems. There's no other way of saying it. The sun's on a separate system to the stars. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, you have the background star field, you have the wandering stars, which they call planets. You have the sun and its path, and you have the moon and its path. So you have 4 different paths going on, basically. 4 different things happening. Whereas they're giving you the impression only 2 things are happening. They're telling you that you're on a rotating globe and the moon happens to be orbiting around that globe in the same direction as the globe is rotating. Other than that, everything else is stationary. When actually there's 4 different movements going on up there.
Right. Hey, Adam.
And we're stationary.
Afternoon.
Can I ask a question?
Comment
in a
on
second.
that if I could, just for a sec.
Yeah, Adam, then Azan afterwards. Yes, Adam, then Azam. Go ahead.
It's just to reiterate a point, yeah. We're lucky in that this same ground position, be it 90 degrees elevation angle for Polaris or 0 degrees, or the position of the sun, we have a correlation there. The two match. The GPs are the same. It's not to say they derive the same. It's just it's a very useful thing as we then put different grid systems together. And the equator is a great one to remind us that actually our layman's use of it is constructed of 2 different systems, which are not interchangeable in terms of speaking of each other, but they do sit alone and enable us to calculate the GPs, but they are very different from each other. One, the only point I would say is we know that the circle of equal altitude from Polaris is definitely a circle. I don't think, if I'm being honest, we can make the same level of assurity. We make the assumption with the sun. As part of Arwin's old beef, what is that equator line? Now we can assume it, place it on to a longitude latitude grid and say it's here. So it's a more difficult thing to prove that.
Well, it only matches at one time of the year. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that was it. It was really to reiterate your point that they're two very different systems, but that will tell us the same place and can confirm the same place, but they don't use the same
It's set to the equinox, isn't it?
to get there. Yeah.
They set the two systems at a particular point in time, right? At the equinox, right, Brian?
Yeah. You've got a time constraint with the sun, not with Polaris. That's going to be the same all year round. But if you're going to use the elevation angle to the sun, then there is a time element in terms of knowing its path, because it's only doing the equator 2 days out of the year, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, what they do is something I was going to come in a few minutes ago and say, actually, before even this part of the topic came up, was that what they do is they do the same in celestial navigation as they do in astronomy. When it comes to elevation angles to these celestial bodies, no matter which one it is, no matter what time of year they're taking them, they pre-assume, right, at the end of their processes, they're pre-assuming that it's at vernal equinox. And what that does is mathematically negate the tilt of their globe, the 23.4 degree tilt, because that places the sun at what we call the equator. And they then pre-assume that flat plane that they call the equatorial plane at the center of their globe extends out into their celestial plane, right, giving them a much huger flat plane, and that it's stationary and the celestial bodies are moving, all of them. So essentially what they do is they negate everything globe and heliocentric by doing that, and they place you on a massive flat stationary plane with moving celestials above you. And that's the end of their process. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Just 1 second. Azan, go ahead.
My question is regarding you're saying that the elevation angle will not change if we change the height of the observer. But if we take the measurement of an elevation of angle of a building top, and it will differ when we measure it from the sea level and when we measure it from a different height. But why doesn't this happen in case of sun?
Don't know. In case of the sun.
Yeah.
No, it does. The same principle applies.
No, I think what he's asking is why
you just said that the observer's height won't change the elevation angle because it will be parallel to the horizontal plane.
Yes.
So it does change in case of the local thing like buildings top. But why does it not change in case of sun?
What I said was the majesty of the heavens. Are you asking why doesn't the angle change when you raise an altitude to the sun? Is that what you're asking?
It does change in case of buildings top, but it doesn't change in case of sun. So
what do you mean by build? It doesn't change in terms of...
I don't know about sun, but with the celestial body, with the star field, and that, it doesn't. I don't know about sun, but with the stars, like Polaris and all them, there's no change. When you raise, they appear to raise with you. Why that happens, none of us know.
It applies to all celestial bodies.
Yeah, it does happen with all celestial bodies. Brian covered it earlier with a disclaimer about what the sun does at the horizon. But with that, notwithstanding that exception, the same principle applies with all items that are in the sky. Yes, you said buildings stop. What do you mean by buildings? Is that what you said? Buildings stop? I didn't quite catch what you said. I got building.
What he was saying is terrestrially, as you raise, the angle to the top of that building will change. But how come that doesn't happen with the stars?
We don't have an answer for that. The fact that it does do that is useful because it means that at all points in elevation, you can make the same parallel plane with the ground and infer the ground position parallel with your position on the flat ground that it must be for this to work. Why it works like that with the sun, stars, moon, anything that we've tracked in the sky, I can't give you an answer why that principle works that way. Glad that it does. We'd have never expanded the known territories if it didn't. Fortunately, because we've got a flat Earth and all measurements made with a horizontal reference are parallel with the plane of the surface that we are standing on, is incredibly useful for not dying, not getting lost, and expanding the world as we know it. So I can't answer you in terms of why that occurs. I just thank God it does. Why I can't give you the how is all I can give you. And the how has been turned into our maps and navigation systems.
I want to go back to what Brian said. So, Brian, you're saying that they throw out the heliocentric system and they use a flat Earth system?
Yeah.
Yeah. In both celestial navigation and astronomy, what they're doing is essentially they're reverting away from global heliocentrism and a stationary flat plane that's covered by a celestial dome.
It's on
That's
screen
what they're
now.
actually doing.
It's on screen.
Yeah. And when I say dome, I'm not talking about... Sorry?
I guess they have to do that because that's the only way it works.
Well, that's the thing about it. And when I say dome, that's only mathematical. I'm not talking about the container being a dome. I'm just saying dome as in orthographically, it's how it's shown like a protractor.
It's on screen now. Look in the Hangout.
Well, I can't see it.
Well, I'm telling you, it's on screen just for the audience's benefit in the Hangout and
yeah,
for the
but
live
I still
audience.
have to give that a disclaimer. I'm not claiming that the stars are in a dome.
No.
Okay? I need to do that.
Seems weak to me, Brian.
No, it has nothing to do with the container. The celestial dome is purely mathematical. As technically, you're dealing with, if you were to, from a perspective point of view, you're dealing with two parallel planes, a horizontal plane of the sky and a horizontal plane of the earth. That's technically how you're dealing with them, with it when you're doing the measurements.
Yeah, like on screen. So this is a glorified protractor, right? So as you but
no, that's orthographic afterwards.
Yeah, that's what you were describing.
From perspective, you're not dealing with a dome.
No, you did. In terms of what you actually deal with, you're dealing with two planes: a plane of the sky, a flat sky, and a flat ground. Now, your view that you can create in orthographic is what's on screen. When you map out what you've measured, the points receding to the horizon would appear lower as per a protractor view, if you will. Yeah, this Polaris axis that you can see on screen, if that was lower towards the horizon, it's lower on the curve of the protractor. But that's a extrapolation from the actual view that you get. What forms this view is a parallel plane with a parallel sky. That is to say, you need a flat sky and a flat ground for this to function, and you need that flat plane and flat sky to not change as you raise in height. Praise be to Jesus.
Yeah, orthographically, it doesn't even have to be a dome. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It doesn't have to be a dome. It can curve into it. Or it can be like two right-angled triangles where the opposites are back-to-back to each other. Let's say
orthographically,
at the top of them. Sorry, Adam.
Orthographically, it can't be a dome. It's a flat, parallel plane of the sky, parallel to the surface, orthographically. If you were to draw it actually orthographically and not draw what you see with your eyes with perspective, which is what makes the dome, the perspective, not the shape of the sky, yeah, then it would just be two parallel planes, orthographically.
Well,
hold on, stop. Hold on. This is the critical point. This is how they've hijacked our world. Adam's just summarised how they've turned the world we view into an orthographic spherical globe that we're standing in to measure the angles we see with perspective, and then project those points up onto the protractor. Now, the dome that's being described is the dome that I'm saying is a protractor in orthographic view, not some dome that's forming containment. It's the dome that becomes the globe surface.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that the dome is a mathematical extrapolation from the angles you're taking in perspective view. But if you were to show it correctly in orthographic view, you just have two straight lines parallel to each other, two horizontal lines parallel to each other.
If I'm at 50 degrees and there's Polaris at 50 and I'm now at 70 and there's Polaris at 70, is Polaris orthographically any lower relative to me when I'm at 50 or 70, or am I just further away?
Don't know, but by perception.
Sky.
But don't know, but by perception, you're just further away.
Yeah, but if I'm to invoke a dome, then suddenly I am changing the nature of the sky from the thing that I know that it's a parallel plane to the surface I navigate. Yeah, I take those angles based on the distance and the perspective. If I then transpose those angles into a repositioning, as opposed to the knowledge I had, which is it's a position on a flat plane, which I read through perspective, that's when we start to, as you say, change people's reality of what measurements you've taken, what the implications of that, and re-gift it a new explanation. In this case, the sky is curving. Even in a flat earther's world, it's curving to form a dome. No, it's not.
Nope.
All those stars are the same height.
Precisely. All the same height, and all the same height at all elevations, with respect that you are taking it higher off the ground at one point versus another. Again, this I smile while I say it because it makes no sense in a terrestrial term to say that something will remain the same elevation angle as you raise in elevation. Well, how can that be? Well, it can't with everything else that we experience. But the stars do function that way, and that's how we've expanded the world.
But that's part of the reason why they portray it like a protractor orthographically. Because if you try to make it two horizontal planes orthographically, you're going to need more than two. Because when you change your position in relation to the star, then that point on the, let's say, the sky ceiling, for want of a better term, is going to change the height of the sky ceiling, apparent height of it, in relation to you. So the sky ceiling will constantly appear to change when you're dealing with just one particular celestial body, let's just say. Like when you're closer to HGP, it'll appear that the sky ceiling that it's on is higher. When you're further from HGP, it'll appear that the sky ceiling it's on is lower. So it's like each individual celestial body has its own sky ceiling, and then that ceiling goes up and down, apparently, for the observer, if you understand what I mean. So
yeah, what you're effectively saying is there is no way to draw it in orthographic view because your x-axis...
It's impossible. It's impossible because
your height axis never makes sense. So if you're drawing an angle from your position to a star at 45 degrees and you're trying to represent it in that diagrammatical way, and also include the fact that at 100 feet you still get 45 degrees, diagrammatically you can't represent that on the same graph. So, orthographically or otherwise, I don't think you can represent this.
Well, you don't know what height the star is when it's at your 90 degrees. And you can't know because as you rise, it appears to rise with you. So it's impossible for you to give any orthographic definite. That's why the protractor was the easiest. Now, you can use other ways, not just protractor. As I said, you can have the arc, the curve into it, or you can have a straight line, like the hypotenuse of a right triangle. But the point being is that it's all only apparent because you can't orthographically draw it. You know what I mean? Because unlike the top of a mountain, they will appear to change in height. You know. Right.
Where does this lead us? What are we now? We are Copernicus.
Confused.
We're Kepler, and what we are is the 500-year-old Jesuit priests that go, how do we model this? Well, if we create the perspective view of the stars and have us as something that's moving in a different mechanical system around the sun, with the star field moving around us, you can create a way of predicting where these cogs slip in a single unified model. You get more and more crazy. You start off by going, how do we represent the fact that the angles stay the same as we go up in height? Well, let's just represent it from a single point in time and have it represented as a dome of the heavens around us with the perspective views that we took, so we can start creating a model with that. Well, from there, you end up 500 years later with a globe, with us standing on it, moving around the sun, to try and make head nor tail of what are separate systems. All the globe is trying to do is create one system where all the cogs work together, and they don't. So that's where we end up in the madness that we're in now, with a religious belief of being in a sky vacuum moving around the sun. But from geniuses trying to figure out how to model this crap that we observe. And I'm just going to say it once more. I don't think you can, based on what the stars do as you raise up.
Well, I would have to agree with half of what you're saying. Is that I reckon it's very likely that Nicholas Copernicus was only trying to portray a way of viewing it, let's just say, right? Whereas I reckon Kepler, now, I don't even know if Copernicus even said any of this, because there's no evidence of a heliocentric globe paradigm pre-Kepler. So whatever Kepler started off with, I think it was purely Kepler that gave us the heliocentric globe, that there was no globe prior to Kepler. And from what I can see, from a geocentric point of view, there can't be. Right? But Kepler definitely manipulated. Kepler was definitely being dishonest.
Correct.
Copernicus couldn't say it, but Kepler, yeah. Because what Kepler did...
It reeks of the gravity thing, where you've got Newton being ascribed gravity to him. Well, it might be the same for Copernicus. Go ahead. Azam, go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to ask another question regarding the same thing that I have asked you about the elevation angle not being changed while the observer's height is increased. So the same thing, I think, what I have understand. So you can say that whether my understanding is correct or not. That the same thing cannot be diagrammatically shown if we consider the sun to be far enough, like in an infinite distance. The same thing cannot be diagrammatically shown on the paper. Is this my understanding correct?
So you're saying, yeah, these. Well, number one, they're two different systems. That's the problem, and that's the reason I'm connecting it to why we'd need a heliocentric model in the first place. But you're saying, if we say, notwithstanding that they are separate systems, the star and sun, can I also suggest that, like with the stars, it would not be diagrammatically possible to represent a parallel plane with an elevation angle to the sun remaining the same, notwithstanding the alterations at the horizon? No, I would agree. I think you wouldn't be able to show that.
Understanding why. So it is beyond our understanding. Why does this happen?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that the stars are an infinite distance away, right? To try and explain how it could work in this, that, or the other paradigm, but that doesn't explain anything, because infinite. What does that mean? That doesn't exist mathematically. Number one. Number two. It's a cop-out if you're saying you live on a heliocentric globe model to say that the sun can be treated as an infinite distance away, or Polaris as at an infinite distance away.
That was my mistake in saying infinite.
When they're given actual distances within that paradigm. Like it's like basically you can't explain it. We have no reference terrestrially for anything that's happening in the sky. The two systems, the two places are completely alien to each other. Finished.
Did that answer your question? You interrupted at one point, presumably because it was unsatisfactory, Azam? Did you ask something else?
Yeah, it's satisfactory to me.
It is, or it isn't?
It is.
Not for me. I mean, your question's perfectly valid. Why does it do that? The how is fascinating, and with a bit of education, you or anybody else could pass this information on and explain how it functions, or even use it. But why? You're asking the right question. Why do the stars do that? Why does the sun do that? I'd love to know. I really, really, really would love to know. The right question. It just gets weaponized against us as flat earthers.
Just read your Bible. It's in there. Why? Well, what will they put there for? Signs and seasons. So why don't they do parallax? Why don't they do all these things? Why do they do all these miraculous things that enable us to tell us what time of year it is, how to navigate across the plane? They do what they're designed for, which is exactly as the Bible states why they were put there.
Nathan, can I just throw something at you? What was, right, in your knowledge, I'm pretty sure you've heard me say this before, but I don't know if it was taken up. What was Newton's inspiration for gravity?
Newton's inspiration for gravity?
Yes, his initial inspiration. What initially inspired him?
Tell me, remind me.
What would people normally say?
His inspiration for explaining why
People would
something
say
fell
an
off a
apple.
tree? An apple?
The apple.
Yeah, but it wasn't. His inspiration was Johannes Kepler. Gravity started with Johannes Kepler.
Yeah.
So it all comes back to Johannes Kepler basically messing with people's, basically gaslighting people, basically, and coming up with. He obviously was very educated, very smart, no doubt about it. The guy was clever, but it all goes back to him.
Yes. When I'm talking to people on OMI, I have to subtly sort of slip them both in at the same time. So I'm talking about the Copernican model, but I'm referencing Kepler by name. That's why I do that. Because with us, even if you're, all the people we deal with are like in terms of their surface scratching. So you have to incorporate the actual origins of it with it being Keplerian. Is that the right term, by the way? Keplerian.
Well,
It is now.
It is now.
It is now. But we've got Copernican, and that's what people are familiar with. Even some of the less educated people that I talk to on OMI, when I say Copernican model, they go, "Oh yeah, I remember that for us in my terms. It's second year of high school, but 8th grade for us, year 8 we call it." Like, "Oh yeah, I remember that from year 8." Like, right, okay, so you're about 12, 13 years old, and you're being taught about the Copernican model specifically.
Yeah, but the Copernican model, as it's put forth, I don't know the full history of Copernicus himself, but isn't it kind of handy that you have this guy Copernicus come out with this very basic solar system model that the complexity of it is then added to 200 years later by Johannes Kepler? Is it not more likely that Johannes Kepler derived the whole lot? Because the solar system that Kepler put forth is just a back engineering of the observations of what we see the sun do throughout a 12-month period.
Right.
He just back engineered the whole lot. So it's very likely Copernicus maybe didn't even exist, I don't know. But
No. I think Copernicus did
That's
exist.
what I was going to say.
There's primary source research. There's primary sources for Copernicus. I just think the timeline is 300 rather than 500 years. I think you're right. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
This is the thing. Primary, is there? Nah. All these guys could just be an invention. Yeah. It could all just be a construct. This is what you've got to be very careful. So when Brian's unpacking that and saying, actually, it's hard to attribute anything, everything ultimately is attributable to this guy, because this is where it all comes. They might try and strap it on and accuse somebody else of it like they did with Newton later, but actually this is where it comes from, and nothing really changes. That's the solid story set. And this is the trouble with history, especially with stuff like this, which is portraying a false paradigm. This is set up well. Intertextuality is the thing that they'll integrate in all of this, so that as you look at it, another text will back up what you've previously assumed. Well, that actually isn't in history necessarily proofs that it's been constructed. If anything, if you've got what's called intertextuality between different sources. So you have to be very careful of assuming that these people and these stories that build this model are even real. Certainly from my cynical point of view, that's how I would view it. I wouldn't assume these guys ever really existed.
Right, but what we do know, this is weird that we've come full circle on this. When I started doing OMI, I put the timeline at 300 years, because that's what I can show. And then everyone's like, why are you saying 300? It's 500. And then there was a big discussion about the timeline, because the timeline, don't get me wrong, I understand that I've got to be accurate within their bullshit timeline, which kind of frustrates me, because then you've got to
Just
sort
don't
of
mention
adhere
Copernicus.
to the Greeks
Only
as
mention
well.
Kepler.
Say again.
Just don't mention Copernicus. Only talk about Kepler and onward. Don't mention anything before Kepler. You don't
I
need
just
to
said
go
this,
into anything before
but then they're
Kepler.
stop.
why would you
Then
say
they're
that?
unfamiliar. So the moment I say the Copernican model, ka-ching, the spark goes off. No, people know what I'm talking about for the most part, not always. If I say Keplerian, people don't know what the hell I'm talking about. That's even more vague.
Yeah, it's like they're like, "Yo, I'm in the woods now. I have no idea what the hell's going
Exactly.
on." You know, it's like,
You want them laser focused on the idea of that globe moving around the sun, and in the mind's eye of anybody, for some, if they've done a surface level research, they're like, it's 2,000 years old, or 5,000 years. I can get my thousands out of order now. Sort of, how long ago is it? The Greeks? Is it 3,000 years ago? They're saying that they already knew 5,000.
It's 2,000.
2,000. I was right the first time. So 2,000 years ago, they've got the Greeks saying that we're on a globe because of eclipses or moon shadows, right? That are assumed to be shadows based on occultation. You're like, what? This is such a stretch. But again, completely made up. When you actually look at where do we get the elliptical motion and what we've all just discussed, being fixing the two different models, the sun and the stars at the vernal equinox. Where's all this coming from? Well, this is 300 years old. That's where it really comes from. So in my mind, this globe religion, or something I mentioned about, I got from a comment about the Georgia Guidestones, that was written on there. I've been saying to people, apparently that was written on the Georgia Guidestones. When I say unified one world religion, I'm getting it from Bush Senior. He was the one who I heard say that. But apparently it was actually on the Georgia Guidestones. I did not know that until someone pointed it out in my comments. I haven't verified that either. So.
That's pretty. That's crazy. And the fact that we are still where we are in this conversation, like people are just flat out lying, and the masses are like not hip to it. Which that's the craziest part to me, that they could lie so blatantly when we point out like a deception, and it's like so obvious, and they're like, "Well, no, that's actually, that's not a deception at all. We can explain that very well." To tear down the Guidestones.
I know where it all comes from.
The religion I'm saying is Keplerian and 300 years old.
Yeah. No matter what the stories are, I know where it originates from.
You're going to say where, or you're going to say who? Who it originates?
Church.
Who?
Satan.
He's red, scaly, with a bifurcated tail, and he carries a hay fork.
This 300-year-old religion is in what I just don't want to mock what Kiwi's saying. It's an inversion. You don't have to type many search terms to find the comparison between heliocentrism and the word of the Bible. It completely inverts the word of the Bible.
Yep.
That's correct, Huey.
Can you give off a couple of examples? Because I'll butcher them.
Isn't that ironic? That this
Hold on.
system.
Hello.
Oh, my bad.
Just completely ignore it. Just ask for an example. I'm just going to have to butcher a couple then. Somebody will have to stop me from doing a terrible job. The Christians will moan in the comments. So, whereas the heliocentric model has everything all coming into existence all at once, as opposed to the Genesis story, where you've got them coming in a certain order. See, I'm butchering it. I can't give the example specifically enough. Can someone not help me out?
Yeah, everything is created from nothing as opposed to created from
three people at once. That would be even better.
The sun is created on the fourth day.
Neil, this is useless.
Basic.
You need to compare. Yeah. Oh my God, this is like pulling teeth.
Let me give it to you. In heliocentric lore, right, everything is created from nothing. Whereas in reality, in the Bible, in reality also, everything is created by a creator. Completely different, two completely different,
too broad.
opposite ends of the scale.
Yeah, that's fine, but I want specific examples, and short of going and finding my iPad, which isn't right next to me by chance, and typing in the search terms to find the word of the scripture where it says the sun and moon come after the ground come, or something like that. Whereas the
I had a list of them on that one presentation. Remember, I went through them.
Yeah, that's why I was hoping you'd help me out, and now we've got this falling apart of the seams instead. Me butchering it.
Just woke up. I'm not here to support your work, counselor.
Oh, well, I'm sure someone will post a link in the comments to this juxtaposition between heliocentric inversion and the actual word of the scriptures. But it would have been nice to have a couple of examples.
QE's list. I never heard that list. Come on, QE.
Shut up. Gave it about 5 or 6 times through the years. The hell up.
So if you're watching now, just know if you haven't heard them the 5 or 6 times, it's only reasonable that it's basically your fault.
That's Dan Skippy.
I mean, how hard could it be to find it?
Pay peanuts, you get monkeys. What can I say?
I actually gave you the one. I gave you something, and you didn't. You put it down.
I said it was too broad. I said it was too broad.
It's all encompassing.
AKA too broad.
It is the absolute be all and end all of the whole thing.
Look, there's a list somewhere with direct quotes from Doctrine of Heliocentrism. Doctrine of Heliocentrism being, in this example for Brian, so I'm not demeaning it, is Big Bang, everything created from nothing. And then it has next to it, word of the scripture, God creates X, Y, and Z. Yeah? It puts them next to each other. But I just don't have the list to hand. Anyway, I don't think we're buying time for QE to dig it out. He's basically said, sod you guys.
He's eating toast.
I'm washing my hands of this. I've done it already. The only reason you know about the list is because I was the one to publicise it to you. And now I'm your bitch to go and get it for you. Johnny on the spotlight. No, I'm eating. Which is perfectly fine and also probably a good opportunity.
No, that's the problem. Maybe he hasn't eaten yet and he's grumpus.
You're supposed to know stuff about the Bible, Neil. You give us a few quotes.
I do, but he's got a list. I want to hear his list.
We'll get to the list some other time because I'm
Where's
going to round
Meekin? He surely has something.
I'm going to round out this live show and say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making the live show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to you for liking, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, hitting me up on PayPal and Ko-Fi and smashing the super chat, all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I will see you all in the next video.